Hello, Internet. Welcome to Awesome Wood Things. This is another Learn Adobe Illustrator live session. So happy to have you. Um, as a reminder, I have to make sure I hit the stop on, there we go, because now the cache is catching up. All right, sorry about that. Just as a reminder, these live hangouts after the show are set to unlisted on the Awesome Wood Things channel. If you have an old URL floating around the internet, that still works. Or you can be a $1 or more patron on my Patreon, patreon.com/awesomewoodthings, and then you'll have a catalog of all of these live session recordings if you wanted to go back. And I do remake the lessons that I do here in the live show. I redo them and make a formal premium web exercise video on YouTube, exercise video that you can follow. But I'm so excited. We have a special guest with us here on the Learn Adobe Illustrator show on Awesome Wood Things. It's Sara from Wartooth Designs. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, everyone. Hello, YouTube, and all the people that are in the YouTubes.
Yes, we love the YouTubes. Sara, I brought you here because we're both Illustrator experts, so I thought, how fun would it be to learn from two Illustrator experts? Can you give us just a little bit of background about the software and how you've been using it and how long you've been using it? I think that would be fun. And anything else about yourself you'd like to share?
I graduated college, which don't necessarily have to do to be an illustrator or graphic designer, but I graduated college with a fancy degree that says that I am a professional in the drawing things and digital art. I've been using Illustrator primarily probably for the last 7 years. I've been using it almost daily for the last 5 years. And I'm a professional illustrator and graphic designer, professional artist. So I do for a living all day or a day. So
Awesome. Yes. So great to have your knowledge and expertise here with us. The theme for this show is what I consider to be one of the most important things. It might not be the most glamorous, but very important to your understanding of Illustrator. What I want to focus on is the things you do to make working in Illustrator easy. So that's things like, how do you select stuff? And I know selection can be boring, but if you're fumbling around with the interface, you can't learn all of the awesome flashy stuff. So things like selection, things like navigation, things like how to arrange the panels, there's the interface can really, really get in your way. And these are all the secrets, all the tips and tricks and stuff like that. So that's what I hope to do. And if there's questions out there on the live chat, please ask your question. It might be helpful to capitalize some of your, I won't care. I won't pretend that you're screaming, but that might help us notice it.
Or just tag. Like if you tag us, then, for me, it comes up neon orange.
That's right. That's right.
So you can totally see if you guys have a question to ask.
Or use Super Chat. That'll make us see it. Just kidding.
Sure.
Super Chat is active until they remove monetization from my channel, which I'm bordering on. For the last week and a half, I've been over the 4,000 hour, 365-day threshold. And it changes each day because each day it rolls forward one more, and then I lose 365, and then so I had a banging awesome year in February last year, 2017. So I'm losing all those views, but I'm keeping up. It's like 4,020, 4,008, 4,028. It goes like this. All right. So we're going to jump into some fun stuff here. Maybe we'll kind of tag, I'll share my screen for like one quick thing, and we'll flip it over to you, Sarah, and
Sure, I might get a little excited and run with it, but I'll try to remember
Hey,
to share.
that's fine too. Well, let me start because you'll probably steal the show, and that's fine. So hit the little green guy here, the little green share. I'll share this, and then you always have to click the present to everyone. You think you're sharing, you get the green bar, but you're not sharing. Okay, so I
Yep.
should be sharing. Excellent. So I have my cool little robots. Sarah, I think you'll appreciate the sci-fi nature of this.
I do. I enjoy little robots. They're
It's
fun to draw.
all line art. It's all shapes too. No rules. It looks like there's a rule here, but there's not. It's just the negative space. Well, okay. So let's talk about the shortcuts. Well, the first shortcut you learned is space bar is the hand. Okay. So you want to move things around. It's space bar. The hand tool comes up. Click. The little hand grabs, and then you move it around, and you grab, and then the zoom in and zoom out is command space, which always gives me this little guy. So I think I go space command. It's weird because if you let me stop sharing. If you go command and then the space bar, you get that OS X or OS 10.
It's a
Well,
spotlight. It's
yeah, spotlight.
search.
But if you go space bar and then command, you can do it the opposite way, then it seems to resolve okay.
See, I'm gonna bring up a point because just that one thing, like everybody does things differently, and it's like with prop making or woodworking or any kind of thing that you make. There's a million ways to get to that final solution. Like for me, I have a drawing display, and if I try to scroll on it, it's really slow. But if I use that hand tool, I can go anywhere I want on the display, and it's really fast. And I use the command plus and minus for zooming, and not my mouse.
Oh,
Sometimes.
yeah.
So
That's see that I love to highlight these differences because I'm opposite. I don't do the command plus, which I'm doing now, command minus.
mm-hmm.
I always break out my magnifying glass, and then I just kind of scrub over.
Yep. Or Z. I tag Z. If I know exactly what I'm going for, I just hit Z on the keyboard and go right for it, and it changes my tool immediately.
Ah, right, Z. But Z leaves it there permanently. I like that. Once I lift up off the keys, I'm back into the tool that I started with. Isn't this fun? I know the chat room's like they're zooming in and zooming out, but
well, when it comes down to keyboard shortcuts, like that is a really critical thing. Like if you're working with something, I'll switch between eraser, pen tool, zooming in and out, selection tools, direct select tools, all over the place. So imagine how long it's going to take you to go up to file, paste, or edit, object, select, or deselect, or whatever. So if you're using one hand on the keyboard and you're using one hand on the mouse, or your pen or whatever, you can go back and forth between all those really fast. And I even have over time you learn that, okay, I really use this command a lot. I need it somewhere that's more accessible. So you just change the keyboard command, which is really easy to do. And then you have something that's custom to what you work with. Like if you're doing something that, I use the smooth tool a ton. So I made a keyboard command for it because there's not one.
I have to hang my head in shame. I do not use the smooth tool all that much because for all my life it didn't exist. Like it wasn't
brand
there.
New. Yeah, it's brand new.
I didn't use it.
Well, it's great for organic shapes that you're trying to kind of get under control because each of the points that you have are more points that you basically can screw up. So the less points you have on a curve, then the better you are at not screwing it up.
Awesome. Yes. All right. Well, why don't you screen share and take us through a tip or two, and we'll just keep.
Let me go back. Let me do the screen share thing. Got this one shared. Am I doing it correctly?
You got it.
My stuff. Okay, so here, one of my, I have this set up so everybody can see this. one tool that I really like we're talking about the zooming in and out, is if you do Command 0, it goes directly back to the artboard that you have selected. So I'm going to select this artboard over here.
Oh,
And
you have more than one artboard.
I do. I use
See,
multiple
that's something
artboards.
I don't ever do. I was taking online training and he was doing that. I was like, does not compute.
Well, artboards are really handy because the design I have on the left is the original design, and I'm going to use that for a T-shirt. The design that's in the blue that's on the right is going to be the 5x7 print that I'll use at a convention coming up. So I didn't need to make a separate file, so these are all sitting in the same file. I just have separate artboards. What's incredibly handy about this is that you can actually export specific artboards. Let me see if I can. You can go to, I gotta find it. You can go to Artboards, and it'll be down here, and you can label them all. But you can also you can print specific ones, and you can export specific artboards. So,
awesome. Hey, there was a chat message we should address.
Sorry.
So East SAC Workshop, SAC Workshop. He says, are PC keys similar? Yes, we'll call out the equivalent from here on out.
Yeah, I do. I have nothing against Windows machines. I've worked with Macs for 20 years. It's just I've worked on both, but I work with Macs, so sorry, Windows people.
Right.
But my favorite thing that I just learned recently is the sorry, I'm trying to remember the word. I just did it before I got on here. Paste in place. And this is if you're working with multiple designs and you want something to stay the same, but you want variations of each one. So I've just highlighted these little bees right here. And I'm going to hit Command C, which is copy. And I'm going to make sure that I've clicked on this second artboard over here. And I don't know the shortcut for this, so forgive me, but it's paste in place. Right. And it will paste it in the exact same position on the next artboard as it was on the second artboard. Now, if I had
control is the opposite on Windows. So Command on Mac, Control on Windows. So
yeah. So if I had just come in, if I had just copied this, and if I pasted it, it would have put it someplace super random. So right. So paste in place, my favoriteest. I love it.
I love paste in place as well, and on top. That's still there.
Yep,
paste on top and below. That can be critical sometimes. Because that's the same as paste in place, but it forces it on the top or the bottom layer.
Yeah, paste in front. I think it's Command or Shift Command V is paste in front. Yeah. That's another thing. Like Control V. Yeah, they're getting it. They know what's up. They know what's going on.
Yes. Every time we say Command, think Control, and every time we say Option, think Alt. So yeah, but we'll try and call it out.
There's tons of online. If you just Google Illustrator shortcuts or Adobe shortcuts, they have lists and posters and beautiful little printouts. And I had one sitting on my desk for probably a year or more. And what I would do is I would just teach myself one command at a time, like when I started using it really heavy. So now I can just be like, you know, like I'm playing the piano over here or something.
Right. So Al from Odessa Woodworking and Maker Shop. Hi, Al. He asked, does Control V work? Well, yes, Control V and Control C, copy, paste, work just fine. But as Sarah pointed out, there's limits to that. When you do these other types of paste operations, you can have more control, like pasting in place or pasting in front or pasting behind.
Yep.
So yes, if you want to do Control V and Control C for copy and Control V, go for it. It'll just plop it down. So I used to think it plops it down in the center of your artboard. That was the logic I thought it did. So if you were zoomed up, wherever that center is on your Zoom screen is where it put it. But it might be a little different now. I don't know what the logic is. But yeah. And then there's paste remembers layers in the layers.
Yes. Paste and remember layer is also another thing that I love.
Do you want me to share my screen or do you want to call it?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so let me do paste remembers layers because this is
And layers are very important. Don't be lazy when it comes to your layers because it'll save you a lot of time in the long run trying to find something.
Okay, so I'm on a layer here called anchor points. Okay. So if I cop up, so there's a setting right here. So I'm in the panel, the layers panel, and I go to this flyout menu for the options, and I can go paste remembers layers. And when I activate it, if I recheck it, you'll see a little check mark. That will persist. So if I copy this guy and then spawn a new document, just keep the defaults, and then paste. Now watch, I only have layer 1 here. When I paste, it should be another layer called anchor points, if all goes right. There it is. Look at that. Anchor points. That's paste remembers layers. This is something that you will want when you know you want it. Like if things get overwhelming, you will feel the pain that you didn't do that. So what, you might not know when you need it, or like you might not think ahead when you might need it, but when you do need it, you'll know you need it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, layers are I have a good example of kind of layers on this little bee illustration that I did, and how really important they are and how they can save you. If I can ever get to the screen share to cooperate. It keeps just like sliding away from me.
There's lots of clicks. There you go.
There we go.
I always hang on that last green bar thinking I'm sharing. You got to actually hit the button.
So, for example, on this, you see that there's a lot of highlights, there's a lot of shading, there's a lot of lowlights. So when I'm doing like my background, it's going to be, of course, towards the back. This is, hold on, I'm on the wrong one. This has been combined into a one layer. So that's a bad example. Here we go. Let's go to this guy. So I've got these highlights that are right here. I've got these, all these lowlights. I have everything combined in separate layers because they have to stack on top of each other. So if I need to go in and I need to fix something and I've mushed it all together on the same layer, it's going to be a real pain. So every single layer is important, and you can actually go in each layer and find a specific path. So keeping them all separate, that will save you in the long run.
I don't think I have ever cranked down the layer to explode out those individual elements ever in my life. Like, what can you sort of explain why that would be good to do?
So for example, I have let's see, let me find it. Let me I guess this will work on here. So I've got this bee right here. I've got it. I've got all of my color on one layer. And say I need to find a very specific point or a path. That's all in that color layer. So I have everything colored on this one layer. So I can go in and I can actually go in this color layer and I could find these specific things and figure out where they are. And you can direct select them, like these little circles over here. Instead of trying to go in and do this number, but like, okay, where is this at? All right, this is this. You can actually go in, select the circle, and it's right here.
Then so you get the selection handles.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can drill down pretty far if you kind of mush everything together, depending on how you've set up your colors and your layers. So it's just kind of handy to have things, especially if you've grouped stuff all together. I'm over here using my hands, like you guys can see me. Especially if you've grouped things together, you can go in and you can find specific things in that group in case you need to move them, change them, put them on a different layer, bring them above something, bring them below something. And now, you can also... oh, go ahead.
I know you can name your layers and you can name your groups. Mm-hmm. Do you just keep the bracket path end bracket, or is that changeable, or do you just, is there no need to change?
Usually I don't keep, I don't really, like for example, this color, like this whole layer, all my color is on one layer. I don't necessarily have to go in here to get any of this stuff unless I really need to. But I don't mess with any of the labels on these. So say, for example, if I've got some funky little bit of color that wasn't right, I can go in here and be like, oh, it's this path right here. So I can go in and I'd be like, what's going on with this guy? You know, why is he a different color? Type deal.
Got it.
So,
Got it.
be yourself, kids. Be yourself.
Awesome. Okay. That's cool. I think as the host, I learned how to just target your screen only because I was talking, but I think the participants only saw your presentation, which was cool.
I'm missing all the questions if there are any.
I've been trying to keep track, so I think we're caught up. If you have questions, just use the capitals and perhaps
So
at also.
Odessa Woodworking and Maker Shop asked, so I'm understanding to do everything on its own layer. Yes and no. Like you don't want to do every line on its own layer. You don't want to do every dot on its own layer, but it's very much intuitive to keep things kind of grouped together. Like if you've got, I want all my typography on my design where it says be yourself to be together, to be on one layer. It doesn't make any sense for it to be on separate layers or on, the layer of the colors. Cause then if I'm trying to edit it, I can't, it's harder to edit it. And a lot of times if I'm going in with my design and I just want to focus on that typography, I don't want to accidentally click. It's very similar to layers in Photoshop, almost identical. The only thing difference between Illustrator and Photoshop is you can't put Illustrator layers into folders, which I wish they would do, but they don't. But so if you want to work on just the typography on this little bee drawing that I did, I can lock all the other layers so I don't accidentally like get crazy and click on them. It just makes it for a faster working environment.
Okay, here's an example of layers. So now this was for more of a presentation for running these classes during the Hangout on air, but I think the concept's the same. So I wanted to first talk about this concept. So I wanted this element hidden the first time I went to this screen, because when we were learning, I wanted to explain this concept first and not overwhelm the student by looking at this concept. So I put all of this on its own layer here, and I can turn it on and off. And then it just made sense to put this pink or magenta, those magenta items on its own layer. And I liked that the title was on one, and then the footer, I usually just lock that bad boy so I can't, so if I accidentally try and pick it up, it's locked. Al, you will get the idea of what makes sense to put on a layer and what doesn't pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And also is handy for when you're exporting things and when you're working with really big files and lots. I mean, I've had files that have had hundreds and hundreds of layers, and you have to keep things you have to keep things organized.
Yeah. Now, speaking of layers, I'm a glutton for punishment. I will work and work and work until it gets so annoying that I have to make a layer. Like I should just jump into layers. Like for example, if I have something, a background, and then I'm manipulating stuff on top of the background, well, you click the background, it'll slide it away.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't want to click the background, you just want to target the items you're working on. So what I'll do is I will lock the item that's in the background, and I'll work and work and work until I have to unlock it and then relock. I unlock and relock and unlock and relock until I get annoyed, and then I just throw it on its own layer.
Yep.
So I could show that. Let me show locking and unlocking. That might be a fun thing to do.
And there's two different ways to actually lock a layer.
Okay, well, we'll see the wrong way. The wrong way I do it first, and then you can tell us the. All right, so let's see. We've got, let's get a different color going here. Put that down below. Oh, why did I choose that awful color? Come on, man. Come on. All right, so this is my typical workflow. And we'll send this all the way to the back. There we go. So I'll be working and I'm like, okay, I'm going to move this over a little bit and I'm going to move this around and I'll be working fine. And then I'll be like, oh, darn. Did you see that? See the blue move? Like I tried to hit this guy. And then so what I'll do is I'll lock. I'll go object, lock, select. I'll use the shortcut Command or Control 2, and then I'll lock it. And then I can start, aligning my stuff again like this and getting that good until I have to unlock. Now, the way unlock works is everything's unlocked. So it's like you can selectively lock this, work, 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 lock something else, work, 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 lock a third thing, work, work, work. But guess what? When you want to unlock it, it's like a tidal wave. Boom, everything becomes unlocked. And then I'll eventually go, all right, you know what? Background, throw it towards the bottom, highlight just my blue, put it on there, and then go. Then go. So that's how I lock and unlock. And I know it's clunky, but I tend to just have that be my go-to, where I just want to lock it quick and just keep going. And then it bites me in the butt, but kind of the way I do it. So what's the second way? Is there a second way to get locking?
Locking the actual layer was the second way to do it, which is the easiest way to do it, and it's the most controllable way to do it. I know the other night on my Twitch, I was kind of telling you guys how to go into isolation mode to color things. In isolation mode, it's not where somebody sticks you in a closet and hides you away forever, I promise. In Illustrator, it's a really handy tool, and it's kind of the quick and dirty way to get to isolate exactly what you're working on. So say, I can show you an example here. Yep, back to my screen. Okay, so I've got this little bee right here, and all of the shading that's on him. So all of this down here, this like little colors and all this highlight, I didn't have to lock or unlock anything. I didn't have to go around the black. All I did is you double click on it, which brings it into isolation mode. Basically, it's telling Illustrator, I just want to look at this group of things. I just want to focus on this little yellow bit, this highlight, and the shading right here.
But wait, when you went into isolation mode, it brought multiple objects into isolation mode.
This is grouped together.
Oh.
So let me do an example.
Oh, because you have the selection tool, not the direct selection tool.
Yep, so what I did is this is I'll do a fun example. I did this the other night on my Twitch channel, and I think it worked pretty well to get the point across. I'll do another bee. So I'm gonna draw a bee. Oops. We got a bee right here. Actually, we're gonna do the black first. My pen will work. My pen's dying. I guess I should have charged my pen up before I started doing this, huh? Okay. We've got the bee. So, and then I want to go in and I want to color behind the black. So I'm going to go into this yellow. I'm going to go back to my blob brush. And the yellow is already behind the black because that's how I started it. I drew the yellow first, and then I drew the black.
Well, what's isolated now? Nothing? Everything?
Nope, just the yellow. I just clicked on the yellow. So just the yellow is isolated.
Okay.
And then what I'm going to do is I can either hit the escape button, or I can go up to this little bar right here and kind of drill back down to where I was. Or I can use the select tool and just double click out of it. So now the yellow is behind the black on the little bee.
And that's when you're in isolation mode, you're automatically in the layer of the thing that you clicked on.
You are as direct inside of that layer as you possibly can be.
Well, layer and its selection stacking order.
Yes, yeah, you are in that shape as much as you can possibly be when you get into isolation mode. So the same works for, like, if I want to add a highlight to this bee. Oops. What have I done? I've done something. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I want to add a highlight to this bee. Actually get the right color. That's not there. Why is it not working? Bear with me.
It's something with isolation mode.
Yeah, probably.
It's anti-isolation.
Oh, it's the wrong color. Sorry.
Oh, I see. So now the yellow's highlighted.
Now I've got I was in the wrong tool and the wrong color. I don't know why this isn't working.
Well, it's a live demo, so yeah,
I know.
it's my
Yeah.
fault. So
That's usually no. It's okay. Uh, but the premise is the fact that when you enter isolation mode, you don't have to ungroup things. You don't have to try to find that layer. You don't have to lock things necessarily. I don't know why this isn't working. That's okay. You can go straight into what you're working on. Like if you wanted to go into this black, you wanted to make it bigger, whatever. You don't have to worry about messing up the other stuff. So isolation mode is pretty handy. That's how I added these. When I went to and I was working on this little bumblebee right here, I added the white highlight and I added the shadow without having to go in and erase anything. I just clicked. I went into this little yellow. I said I want to add a shadow. I want to add a highlight, and done, done and done.
yeah, see, isolation mode is something I used to fall into by accident, and then I would hit that little left arrow to get out of it.
Yep.
Once I figured out the left arrow was there for a while, I was like, oh,
If
save,
you can,
close,
yeah.
call back up.
Yep, you can fall into it pretty easily.
What are the other options up there in isolation mode? So,
Let's see. Let's click into that. I think you can go into color. To be honest, I've never really messed with these.
okay, so stay away.
No, I mean not necessarily stay away. That's I just don't know. I know how to get there and then do what I need to do.
Right.
It's great if you group things together. Like if you have an object that you've grouped together, but you need to change something in it without having to ungroup it, which is we all know is a pain. So instead of having to ungroup this and go in, change the white, you can just go into isolation mode, click on this white right here. I want to change it to red for some dumb reason, and then you have red.
The question was, are you using a Wacom tablet? Sarah is using a tablet. It's a different brand, though, I believe.
I'm not using a Wacom. I'm actually using a Ugee, Ugee. It's about a quarter of the price of a Wacom tablet.
I noticed just the entry Wacom doesn't have a screen, so you would just put it on your desk and look at the monitor while you're drawing, and that was $80.
Oh yeah, you can find a really cheap drawing tablet for anywhere from $40 to $60 now. The technology has come so far; they've come down incredibly in price. The first drawing tablet I ever had was I think $150, and now the same one comparably is around $50. This I have a 21.5-inch drawing display, so I see exactly like I see Illustrator right in front of me.
And you like drawing on the pixels.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. No pixels in Vector. No pixels in Illustrator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I draw exactly. I draw on the screen, so what I see is exactly what I get, and it's. I actually blew another graphic designer's brain the other day because he didn't realize that you could actually use a pen, like a drawing tablet pen, in Illustrator. So I was like, "What?"
Well, that can get pressure sensitive. So if you drew a line with light pressure, it would be thin, and then hard pressure, it would be fat, and then it would be thin again, right?
Absolutely. I have a bunch of custom brushes set up on my screen or on my on my Illustrator.
Take us through like the easy to hard,
Yeah, I have Illustrator. You can really go crazy with brushes. I have about 4 basic brushes that I use. Photoshop, you can have hundreds, but this has, once again, my pen is dying. So
so that's a battery thing on your pen.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that I don't have the right color either. I've also had an issue with my pen on my tablet.
Are you stroking with white?
No, it's the. There we go.
Yeah.
So this is like super duper light. Let me zoom in here. There we go. And then you can get like.
And that's just with the pressure that you're putting on the. See, now that's where if you have a mouse, you're not getting that.
But there's also a really cool tool. It's the width tool. So if you come in and you draw, I just grabbed the pen tool. I did that really fast. Sorry. So I just have the pen tool. I'm drawing a simple line. There's actually a tool right here. It's the width tool.
Yeah, we covered that in one of the classes. It's a funky tool.
You can just come in here and do that. You can also adjust your shapes with. It's not as pretty as using a pen tool, but you've got this little option up here. You can you can work with it a little bit. But yeah, there's a bunch of different different ways to use it. And the blob brush and the paintbrush are two different things. So if anybody wants to know about that.
The the what brush?
The blob, okay, so there's a blob brush,
blob brush tool. Yeah, I see.
A paintbrush tool. So they're under the same things. So a paintbrush tool is a line. So you go in here. I'm gonna draw this. Let's get rid of this terrible bee down there. This is going to be just a regular vectored line. I have all my points here. I can come in. I can adjust all my points. Now, if I draw a shape over top of it, they're still separate. They're still very separate.
As you would expect.
So a blob brush, you can come in, I'm going to draw a line. It looks exactly the same, but it's actually a shape. I can still change the shape of it, but now it's almost like you've outlined the stroke.
Right. Right.
So, but the cool thing I use for a blob brush is coloring. So if I come back in with the blob brush and I go, whoop, now it's all one shape.
Okay. So it's like you're joining, you're using the Unite Pathfinder automatically.
Yep.
With everything on the same.
Yeah. And you can accomplish the exact same thing through what's the name of the tablet you use? You keep finding Ouija boards. It's UGEE.
Oh.
Ouija, not Ouija. But yeah, you can accomplish the same thing with the lines through a bunch of different options. So you can go in, you can...
Oh, you just answered Al, I see.
You can outline the stroke and then go in the Pathfinder tool and unite all the shapes, and you've accomplished the same things. Or you can use the blob brush.
The blob brush.
Yeah.
Got it. See, I typically don't have a tablet with me, so I don't go down into the blob brush tool. Nor do I use the brush. I'm all old school. I am pen tool all the way.
Oh yeah, and the pen. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I go in, like, even with this little bee illustration, there's a lot of times where I go in and I'll use a pen, use my mouse. Like, I switch back and forth between my tablet and my mouse. If I'm doing graphic design stuff, I almost always use my mouse. You know, if I'm drawing with these kind of things, I'll use my. See, look at all that mess.
Right.
Yeah.
We have a newbie question. So this is from Shane from Shane's Hobby Shop. He asks, what's the difference between Illustrator and Photoshop? The quick answer is Photoshop has to do with pixels. So it's a series of squares, and each square is its own color, and you stack enough squares together, or pixel, and it makes an image. Vectors, which is what we're using in Adobe Illustrator, which is also referred to as line art, which is the difference between Illustrator and Photoshop. Line art is 2 coordinate points connected together with stroke attributes. So it's just math under the hood. So it's not pixel, 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 pixel creating the shape. It's just points that are connected, and then you can control what color the line is and how wide and the line is. Essentially, line art is very small in file size because it's just an XY, and an instruction between them. And then curves get a little funky, but it's the same deal. So it's no resolution whatsoever. Line art or vectors is the absence of pixels. So you could have a logo and put it on a stamp, or you can put that same file on the side of an airplane. You will not see any pixels whatsoever. So that's my quick answer to what the difference is. Now, to confuse things, you can put raster elements inside of Illustrator, and some of Illustrator's features will make your stuff into pixels. So Illustrator, in some ways, in a limited capacity, is both. But it is, without a doubt, the industry standard best line art program out there worldwide. Like, nothing else touches it. And oddly enough, other similar programs that compete with Illustrator. Some are shareware, some are low cost, some are free. They try and have their drawing tools be easier to use. And by easier to use, you might be able to ramp up more quickly, but they're in some capacity far more limiting than what Illustrator has. So if you master that pen tool in Illustrator, because it's a different technique to master it, but if you master it, the world is your oyster, and you can do anything. So that's my oh, Chad from Man Crafting's here. Hi,
I don't know.
Chad.
I don't know who Sarah with an H is. Sarah without an H is here.
Yeah, S-A-R-A.
Just kidding.
Awesome.
As for I know we're talking about not getting too wrapped up in the program because it could be painfully overwhelming. Like once you open it up, there's a lot to it. And it's basically just mastering one thing at a time. And once you realize the tools that you use very frequently, you can actually set up your desktop accordingly. You can save your how you have everything set up. You can actually save it, which is I have different setups for different things. Like if I'm doing graphic design, if I'm doing lettering or something, I have a different display or I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of it. Hold on. Workspace. That's what it is. You can have different workspace setups. So I have a different workspace for when I'm on Twitch. I have a different workspace when I'm on doing a logo. I have a different workspace if I'm painting. So once you figure out the tools that you use, it becomes easier to become more comfortable inside of Illustrator.
So Workspace is an Illustrator feature and
Yes.
not Mac OS 10 panel. Okay.
Workspaces, I believe it's all across all Adobe programs. Because in any given day, I know this is very Illustrator centered, but in any given day, I might use Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign all in conjunction with each other because they each have very powerful tools to their own right. But let me see if I can get back to the share screen. I'll show you. So please forgive the terrible naming of my workspaces, but this one is called Shitbag, so I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me target you to everyone. Okay. How can you see you're in that? Oh, up there.
So it's
okay.
up here. So I've got the newest update for Adobe CC was actually a very intuitive interface. And how they set it up, I went to Adobe Max, so I got kind of like a really over like explanation of all this. So the way they set it up is when you click on something, they want to bring up the characteristics and what you can do with that image. And I've worked with this interface. It's kind of cool. I kind of like it, but it also is, I think, a little limiting. And I think it's really overwhelming for somebody who's very new. So this is the essentials, and this is the new Creative Cloud Adobe CC 2018, I think, workspace. And what it'll do is it'll come up with all the things that you can do with that specific piece.
Yeah, mine came up with Essentials Classic by default.
Well, yeah, and Essentials Classic is where I recommend anybody who's not very familiar with Illustrator to start out with, because it kind of shows you what you might be using right off of the bat.
So this is just where your panels are located on the screen.
Yes. Yeah, and you can rearrange these. Say if I know that I will never use symbols, I can drag it out, get rid of it. Say like I don't need all of this stuff for the stroke. I'm going to hide all the options for that. The brushes, I actually have all my custom brushes that load automatically. But say like you want
the brushes loading automatically is Illustrator specific, not necessarily a workspace specific thing, right?
As for like Photoshop or Illustrator, or just saying
as for those brushes appearing in that palette, that'll happen Illustrator wide, regardless of what.
Yeah, a certain series of brushes will appear. The default brushes will show up. So, I've got So here's my workspace that I use for when I'm doing graphic design, because I've got everything kind of collapsed. And you can
Okay.
actually open all these up, and kind of see what's going on. You can close windows down. I've got this palette picker right here, color picker. I've got all my brushes that are pretty big right here. So then I can go to, I like how these are labeled butts and no butts.
Okay.
So you can set it up how you want it. And there's other things like, and the Illustrator will kind of give you some to start you off with. Like here's one for if you're going to do any kind of web graphics. Here's one for typography, like if you're going to be working with letters. So they're giving you basically what they think you would need to start out with all. They're throwing all the panels out there for you, what you might need. There's one for layout. So yeah.
So there was a question about the Bridge, Adobe Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a workflow type thing, right? Can you explain that a bit?
I actually don't use Adobe Bridge. It is a file management type of program. I have opened Bridge maybe 5 times. I actually use libraries. Libraries are these wonderful little categories that you can keep of everything that you need, especially, and I speak a lot of through Creative Cloud because that's what I use. And to answer Dylan's woodworking question, you can use Illustrator to draw, and that's what I usually draw with because it facilitates to my type of illustration. Sorry, I got totally sidetracked.
I
But
just answered the one.
libraries hold everything that you need in one space. So I was working on a coloring book, and I was working in InDesign and I was working in Illustrator. So I saved all of my little drawings in my libraries, which is part of my Creative Cloud. So if I open up InDesign, they're all right here. If I open up Illustrator, they're all right here. There's no more like hunting and trying to find files. So it's a great way to keep everything that you're working on in one space.
Got it.
I get very excited. I'm sorry.
No, I love being able to work efficiently, and
Mm-hmm.
I can get stuck in, the old way of doing it, and just
Libraries are great because you can keep your palette, you can keep um, your typefaces, you can keep your graphics, you can keep if you use there's Adobe Capture on your phone. If you use any of that stuff, like you'd use, it automatically goes into your libraries. That's a little further than Illustrator. I'm sorry. I just kind of like.
no. Well, with doing textbook illustrations, because that's where I started doing
Mhm.
art for engineering, science, and math at the college level. We would have just a file, and we
Mhm.
would call the file border.ai, border.illustrator. And then on that would be something of every color that was approved, because in technical illustrations, um, some things the color has to be very specific, especially with physics stuff. Like the dark blue is gravity, and then the green is acceleration or velocity and things like
Mhm.
that. So we'd have it all there, and then when we would start, we would just copy the border, rename it figure 1.1.eps, and then open it and go. And that was essentially what you've just described, only
Mhm.
old school.
Yeah, and you can use like I have a lot of templates set up because I do a lot of social media. So I have a template set up to where it's the exact size of Instagram, or the exact size of Facebook, or the exact size of YouTube thumbnail. So there's a lot of, I could talk all day about workflow, um, and how to optimize it and how to utilize it and how to become familiar with it. So you are, instead of cranking something out in 5 hours, you can get it done in 3 hours.
That's from a workflow perspective. Yeah, well, maybe we'll have to have you back, and we can touch on workflow while we focus on getting around the program quickly this time. Dylan asked a great question. He's like, "So, is Illustrator the best for doing logos?"
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
a
Yes.
thousand
Yes.
times yes.
Yeah. Logo. I'm just gonna put it this way. You can do logos in InDesign. It's very awkward. You can do logos in Photoshop. but more than likely the person that's going to have to deal with them down the road is going to want to shoot you in the foot. And it's like just because you have a liter of vodka on Friday night doesn't mean you should drink the liter of vodka on Friday night.
I love
just
it.
just just throwing that out there. Just
Yeah, here I'll take a peek at some of my logos here just for funsies. Logo design. Now these are pixel representations of logos, and but you get the idea of a few that I've created. This one does have a raster background, but the words and the drop shadows were line art in Illustrator. This is all line art, solid colors, of course. This is just ignore that. Same thing down here, all line art and all line art. So just a few that I've done many, many more, but for some reason these are the ones that are sticking in the on my website for some reason. I have to go update this guy.
And Illustrator isn't just for logos. Like I have done, I actually did a truck wrap in Illustrator. I've done
What was the size you had to work with there?
I
Four
did
foot by 12.
yeah, and that's the thing, like you're not super limited. I actually did it was I used to do a lot of banners and I would have to do like 40-foot banners, and you can do that in Illustrator and it won't crash your computer. Like basically what you'll do is do it at um, probably around 150 or 200 DPI, or do it at half the size and let them know what size it is. So you can shrink it down, because when you're working with vectors, you can blow it up and it doesn't lose its resolution. So
That's what I love about it. That's what the
yep,
industry loves about it.
yep, yep. Yeah, and
Oh, look at this. Shane says, is it easy to learn for an old timer like me? The answer is, if I'm teaching you, it is easy because I have taught a lot of people how to use Illustrator. I did evening classes at a college for adult evening classes, and yes, I'm good at taking geek speak and into plain English. The developer in me kind of helps
yeah,
with that too,
and
because
it
there's some
and go ahead. No, go for
there
it.
were some complicated concepts in Illustrator, and I do it that. I'm working on a course. You heard it here first, folks. I'm working on a Learn Adobe Illustrator course. I might feature the pen tool as the first self-contained purchasable course, but I'm doing it. And Shane, I'll give you a free coupon code. There you go.
Right on. Yeah, it's the way I put it. Trying to explain to people, there's a lot of features of it that I never use and I never ever ever touch. But it's like eating an elephant. Like, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. Like, you start with one bite at a time. So you learn one thing and you move on, you move on, you move on. And there are things that I'm still learning today. I've been doing this professionally for about 5 years now as a full-time career, and there are still things that I learn. You know, I'll pick something out because I have to solve a problem. Like, I don't know how to do that, so I figure it out.
That's the
So,
thing. When you're looking around on Illustrator courses, it's usually a deep dive into one concept.
mhm.
Like there are very few courses where it's top to bottom, the whole shebang.
Yep.
So there's, Illustrator for logo design, Illustrator for, a 3D concepts, working with rasters inside of Illustrator, the pen tool in Illustrator. Yeah, it can get.
To answer Mancrafting's question, I have used Illustrator on an iPad, and it's pretty much it's kind of dumbed down. It's stripped of a lot of the features, but the principle is almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Like, I used it. I never used like the actual pen tool or for anything like that. I used it to draw in. So yeah.
I have not used Illustrator on a tablet device, only on the computer. But the tablets are getting more and more capable. The new Apple tablets, the big ones, what are they, $1,000?
Yeah.
They're full computer replacements if you
I'm
can.
about to bite the bullet and get one.
And Adobe, to their credit, is working on making their apps work on all those different spaces. Might
They
not
usually
have
do.
every feature, but yeah.
And if you're looking for an alternative to Illustrator, if you're like, I don't know if I want to fork up the money, I'm sure Matt has options, but I know Inkscape is free. I've only opened it maybe twice. because I have Illustrator. Like I don't I don't need to go down to Inkscape. I'm not saying going down to it is a bad thing, but
a lot of makers in the community use that program because it's
free.
cheap, and Illustrator is free for 30 days. You can get as many Adobe products as you want for free in the trial for 30 days. So you can jump in and play around.
I have one more favorite thing to share of my things to share away with that I really enjoy, and this is brand new for Illustrator in the last, I think, like year or so. And it is the export for screen option. And this is if you're working with a lot of assets. I don't know if you've covered this at all or talked about it, but so let me zoom out here a little bit. So there's two ways that this is fantastic. So I'm just going to highlight, I'm actually just going to grab the type. I just want to save the type. So if I right click on this type, I can collect for export. So collecting for export is a way to get all of your images out of Illustrator and into whatever you want to use them for, whether you're putting them in on a card or a design or a t-shirt or anything. So I can do it as a single asset or multiple assets. So if I do it as a single one, it brings up this fun dialog box. I guess I should have picked something that wasn't white, but so you can actually choose how you want to save it and in multiple formats. This is my favorite thing because a lot of times if I'm doing a design for somebody, they need to have it in a PNG, a PDF, maybe a JPEG, and something else. I don't want to do it a million times, so I can go in here and I can add all of those scales really quickly, and I can define all of them, and I can export them, and it automatically brings them up.
Oh, so it's like a mass export dump into all different kinds of flavors.
Yes. And the other thing that I was talking about with the artboards, it's another way to keep your art organized. But there is export and then export for screens. Let me bring it. And you can do the same thing, but you can also do it for your artboards. So if you have everything on a separate artboard, you can go in and be like, I want to save all of these artboards, and I want to save them as a PNG and as a JPEG and as an SVG. And
so it's not just limited to raster formats. You can get some SVG line art formats happening.
Yep, and a PDF. So, and then I can go in, I can tell it exactly where it needs to go. And I can do, maybe I want it at 300 PPI. I want this one at 150. You get the idea. So
yeah.
You can also do it for assets, meaning the little bits and pieces of it. So yeah, that is probably another one of my favorite tools. It saves you so much time when you need to get things out of Illustrator.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's like what is it? The Command Option Shift whatever keyboard from Photoshop that brings up the export panel. Command Option Shift E, I think. I don't know, whatever it is. I contort my fingers when I press it, and
some of those shortcuts, man. I'm like, oh, come on. Like one for the artboards, it's like Shift O. I use my left hand on my keyboard, and I'm like, I can't. Oh yeah.
No, I get contortionist. One more tip, and it's not anything to screen share, is, and I swear to God, everyone must do this. And you can do this in any program. This isn't Illustrator specific. So you're hunting for a feature and you find what you want. So let's say you go up to a menu item and you go, well, I'll follow along here. You go to like Option, unlock all. Okay. So that's 3 keys. Well, so it's like Option Shift 2. What you should do is don't select it in the menu. Roll off of it and then use the keyboard shortcut right there. Don't say to yourself, the next time I'm going to...
Get the habit.
Something locks in your brain, like the neurons fire, and you get it. So if you stumble around and you find what you want, don't hit it in the menu. Roll off the menu. Hey, thanks, Paul. Oh, we also got a super chat from JP for a couple bucks. Thank you, JP. And Paul Wilmore. $10 super chat. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. So yeah, so do that in any program. Don't use the menu item and think you're going to remember that shortcut. Roll off the menu item and actually hit that shortcut, and something in your brain will lock it.
My last thing for Illustrator. If you can't remember anything and you don't know where anything is, and you're just I need to know, I can't find the path tool, or I can't find the shape tool, go over to help. I love this about the new Illustrator. The help. Okay, so I want to find a keyboard will work. Pathfinder. So I want Pathfinder outline stroke. It tells you where it's at.
I know.
Everything.
I love that.
So it's teaching you how to get to it. So you can go over here and you go path and you go, oh, you find it. Oh yeah. Wonderful.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm so bummed we're at the top of the hour. We should probably wrap things up. It was so good having you on the panel here, Sara. Having two experts, I think, really helped with the community. Would you come back and do it again sometime?
Sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Why don't you tell the folks where they can find you on the interwebs?
Everywhere. Wartooth Designs. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
You just Google Wartooth Designs, and I'll
And
be
before I jump off, if anyone is interested on the class that I'm building, you can go to learnadobenow.com and put in your name and email address, and I will keep you posted as that develops. Learnadobenow.com. Yeah, put in your email address, and we'll get that get you on the list, and I'll keep you posted as that develops. I'm really excited about that. More information about that class will be given in the future. Thank you, chat room. Thank you for the super chats. I appreciate it. Patreon.com/awesomewoodthings. The URL that made you find this is still going to be active on socials, but you won't be able to find this on the channel itself. So just copy that URL if you want to come back to this, or be $1 or more patron on patreon.com/awesomewoodthings, and you have the whole live show recording catalog. Thank you, everyone. Until next week, stay awesome at Illustrator. Thank you again, Sara. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks.
All right, bye, folks.